Great. So my name is Tierney Powers, and this is Getting to Depth. And what we are going to talk about today is amongst each other, we're going to reflect on certain questions and exercises, and then talk about our observations and our experience together. So the format was going to potentially be either 3 exercises, or it's going to be one fairly difficult exercise. And since there's more people than I expected, I'm going to go with the easier ones. Ultimately, you're going to have access to this whole workbook. It's going to be downloadable afterwards. And my goal is that you're not only going to learn something new about yourself and enjoy the process and get uncomfortable, but also you're going to have tools that you're going to be able to use with your teams, your friends, your family, and potentially even lead your own workshop at some point in the future with the tools that I'm giving you. And these are tools that come from methodologies like conscious leadership, somatic intelligence, from LEAD, as well as my own experience in the tech industry for the past 10 years. So I have been working with in a sales capacity for the past 10 years. I've been in the field for 5. And then about 5 years ago, I had my ants in my pants, which is very normal for me. And I got the opportunity to become in charge of customer experience, sales, and business development for a SaaS company. And what I realized was this is going to be very uncomfortable for me because, like many of you, my reports had far more experience than I did. And they had potentially 30 years of experience in some cases, and I was barely 30. So what I realized is this is going to be challenging, but I want to make the most of it, and I want to tap into what it is that I love, which is people and understanding people, and I'm going to enjoy myself while leading. And so I started on this hunt of like figuring out how to do that, and I found these resources. And so the first exercise I'm going to start with is just a warm-up of breath work and some posture. So in 2019, I went to a retreat in Morocco, and before then, I never cared about slowing down. We just came from slowing down, a lot of us. And the idea of posture, my mother always told me that I look like a jock, because I was a jock growing up, and I didn't have any elegance. And when I went to that retreat, it was a somatic intelligence retreat, and I realized the minute I walked in how powerful this posture stuff would be for the people I work with in the tech industry. A lot of us, I'm really impressed by a lot of the people's posture at Me2We so far, but there are a lot of people that I've worked with who are like this, and this is not a powerful mode to be in. It's not good for your body, and it also doesn't look great. So the first thing I want to do is start out with what I've learned. So stand up. And we're going to start by just taking some deep breaths. And the first breathing exercise is going to be more for alertness. So you can close your eyes, and I'd like you to take 15 breaths in quickly through the nose and out. So here's some coughing. That's good. Keep going. Three more, and then you're going to hold your breath. Take a deep breath in, let it all out, and hold. while you're finishing holding. By the way, in the workbook, there's some science behind these crazy exercises. And that way, I know I have in my folder here, there's one set, and you can stop holding your breath whenever you have to. There's this one set of papers I put together and I put it in there, and I put a little paper clip on evidence. Because in this world where we are constantly thinking about how to be most successful and productive, and we want science-backed exercises, we want science-backed tools, and that's critical, and this is science-backed. So I'm not going to go into that since we only have 1 hour. The content really should be done in 3 hours, but we're going to speed it up. And okay, now I'd like to reverse that exercise and take 6 breaths in, or six count breath in and a 6 count breath out. Okay, so keeping your eyes closed, I want you to, at your own pace, breathing in for 6, and then breathing out for 6, as slow as you want to count. And as you do that, I want you to bring your shoulders back and your chest forward. And a new thing is bring pivot your whole trunk slightly forward, maybe an inch, so that your weight is more in your toes and you're really having intention in that posture. And bring the head up through the spine, like you have a string lifting you up. We don't want the chin way out in front, looking like a duck. This is all of us, because we're intense and we want to achieve. What we want to do is have that elegance and that presence. So a few more ins and outs, and you all look beautiful. A little more with the chest and a little bit more up high and bringing yourself forward. You'll be surprised how much better you can even open your eyes right now. You can see that I am in a posture of slightly forward. When I'm back like this, it's a whole different ballgame. So we can still be achieving, but we can bring our chest forward and we can be in the most ideal power pose, I would call it, for ourselves. And now loosen up a little bit. Okay, so now you can sit down. This is some of the background for some of the research that comes from this. As mentioned, it's GSB concepts. It's tools that world-leading CEO coaches are using. These are some of you might know RC. He is part of our lead group. He's also part of YPO. And a lot of the facilitators for YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization, teach these concepts. So what we're going to talk about, and relationship experts, by the way, one of the exercises that we're doing, I'm not going to tell you which one, comes from a relationship workshop that I've taken. Because ultimately what we're trying to do here is get to know the people that we're working with in a deep way, because what the science says is that people who are inspired at work are going to give 224% sweat equity, because they love what they're doing, they believe in it, and they're inspired by their leader. Whereas if they're engaged, they're going to give about 140%. And if they are satisfied, they're going to give 100%. And if they are undersatisfied and just showing up, that's going to be less than 70%. So if we can connect with the people at work in a way that they feel understood and they feel inspired, which takes vulnerability, which is the muscle that we're going to be using today, we're going to have an inspired workforce, relationships, even outside of business, and this works with customers too. So the first exercise is called aligning with self. And the muscle that we're working is self-awareness, humility, and vulnerability. It does come from conscious leadership. So you might have the one-page assessment in front of you. It's a worksheet. And I'd like you to take about 2 minutes, maybe 3, to complete the exercise. There's instructions at the top, and if you don't have one, you can ask the person next to you to give you theirs once they finish. Or you can team up. Oh yeah, that's a great idea too. Take a picture of somebody's. I'll give you 5 minutes. It's a 10 questions. It's 10 questions, and I'll give you some of the instructions. You basically want to use 1 through 4 in each row. You can only use that one number once. So something is your least and something is your most. And whatever is your least, that should be a 1. And whatever is your most, that should be a 4. And by the way, this is not the exercise. The actual depth is going to come from what we do afterwards, but this is just a tool.
A quick question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between trusting your intuition and my gut reaction?
You're probably, do either of those resonate with you?
They mean the same thing to me. That's why I'm asking.
I think that intuition might be more along the lines of, I have a friend who's extremely spiritual, and he feels like things are coming in a way that he's intuiting it. He's reading the situation, whereas a gut is like, it comes immediately. You're like, I'm impulsive. I'm going to do this right now, which is me. So I know that. And while you're finishing that, I'm also going to give that definition of self-awareness, which is the ability to take an honest look at your life without attachment to right or wrong. So there's no right or wrong type. That's the beauty of all of this. Just like we want diversity in business and in life, because it breeds better creativity, more creativity. It's not just diversity of race or of age, it's also diversity of types. So, okay. And when you're done, add up at the bottom all of your totals. Who needs more time? So I'm going to trust you that you're not going to change your scores. But as you add up your totals, if your total for the first column was the highest, that puts you in the helper. So you can write that down. The helper category. And if your total for the second column is the highest, that's going to put you in the organizer category. And the next category is the thinker. So column 3, if it's your highest, that's the thinker. And then the fourth column is the catalyst. Okay, so now I'd like you to break into pairs. Get a partner. And you're going to introduce yourself, share your name, and share what you just learned, what's the type. And I'd like you to eye gaze for 2 minutes. And I'm going to give you a few little prompts throughout this, but the goal is to keep eye contact with that person. Now everyone's changing who their partner is. Okay, please team up. Do you want to be partners?
Sure.
Do it.
Actually, you're right. No, excuse me. No talking while eye gazing. That's a good question from the front row.
When do we start?
Let's all find some quiet, and we can start. Let me set the timer. Okay, you can start now. Oh, so you're going to introduce yourself, your name, maybe where you're from, and your type. That's it. Yes. Okay. All right. I hear some people giving a little more than just their name and their type. So at this point, there should be no more talking.
Can we blink?
You can blink. You can blink, and you can also appreciate that person across from you. Okay, I'm going to just ask one more time for quiet. you'll get to be socializing in a moment. So as you look at this person across from you, you're going to recognize that they are unique. You don't look at me, look at him. This is a person who has gone through ups and downs in life. They've lost people. They've fallen in love. They might have trouble being quiet. And ultimately, what you want to do is find some appreciation in your heart for this awkward moment. Okay. Now I'm going to pass around a document that shares a little bit about these different types. So you guys can take a deep breath. That's over. And you can look at this together. And I want you to just, mainly take a look at your type, if you could. You guys can share these. I don't have quite enough for everybody. Yeah, can you share it with those four?
I'll just take the picture of the story. No.
Yes, I do. And if you can see if you don't get one of these documents, you can also come to the front row and look at, you're welcome to actually get up and look at what's on the screen, because this is also explaining to you the different types. And it's important that you do get to take a look at this because there are things in here like, what are your most common fears? What do other people perceive about my traits? And by the way, a quick show of hands, how many people tested as a helper? We're helpers. What about thinkers? Wow. What about catalysts? And what about organizers? And how many people had like a really big difference between their top one and their others?
What qualifies as really good?
Like in the 30s. Cool. What was yours?
35.
For what?
Organizer.
I love you. I really need those in my life. Okay. All right. So you've now gotten to look at what we're seeing about ourselves. So the real part of this exercise is what that you've read. Are you like, yes, that is so me. And by the way, I love that about myself. And what is the one thing that you're reading and it's like, well, that's not me. That's just not. That doesn't. They just got that wrong, or I just don't fit that thing.
This is pretty spot on. This is fantastic. I just think that everything is so creepy.
Really?
Creepy is a perfect
Okay,
word.
so if anything doesn't seem, if maybe something seems accurate, but like which makes you the most cringy and uncomfortable out of all these things? It could be good or it could be bad. I'll give you an example. So for me, I'm the catalyst. And when it says to be more organized and consistent, I think, ooh. Oh, first of all, I can do that if I want to. Yes.
It's hard. I'm a catalyst too, and having a team of people with several of them are highly organized. It's challenging. It's mentally disruptive. Not being that organized.
Yeah. So you're saying that basically it's challenging for them, or it's challenging for you to have people so organized?
Yes, the latter. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's hard for me to associate how I problem solve or how I structure my it can be my regular workday or whatever around more spontaneous. I think there's more agility with it, but it's also the backlash is that you have a team. I mean, that's what happens to me right now. I have a team that is highly organized, so I kind of have to force myself to fit within that, which is not my natural tendency. That's just natural to do.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Oh, what was your name? Ricardo. Yes.
So one that made me cringe a little is I don't see myself as a huge risk taker, but I also work in a very, very, very conservative office environment where it's like we require immediate guaranteed return on investment to make an investment level conservative. So maybe in that context, one might call me a risk taker because I think that's insane. But in general, I'm not exactly about to jump off a building and see if I fly. I'm not really a crazy risk taker. So I don't know if I would say that someone would say, oh, Kevin's big on taking risks and he needs to learn to not take risks. I'd say I'm pretty calculated if I see a real risk coming, but I certainly have more fun when I can be spontaneous.
Okay.
I'm curious if other people have that because I was looking through the column and I didn't see anything that says I'm a really risky person.
So I was thinking that we would go back to our pairs and we would share it with each other about what's that really uncomfortable thing that we read in this, or just, it doesn't have to be really, but just that one thing that you're kind of feeling some maybe shame around, maybe some ugliness around that thing, or maybe you're like, I know people think that about me, but I've learned how to work with that. Because I have to say, there's something on all of these. I read mine and I thought, oh gosh, I love being a catalyst. I'm so happy with it. But at the same time, the things that they don't, it's like getting a 360 where you come on in. When you get a 360, you go right to the bad stuff and you think about what's that stuff. And then I looked at everyone else's and they all have some weird things in there. So would you rather just talk together in this group and raise your hand and share, or break back into the twos? Okay, share it all together. So who else wants to share about, and this is even more authentic and more vulnerable to share in front of everyone, but be careful not to do that thing where you say, I just worked so hard in the interview. Like I just worked too hard. Like I don't want to hear those answers. Okay.
Well, I'm kind of, so apparently I'm a catalyst. I'm thinking, I don't know if I buy into all this, but then it says,
Oh, I love it.
one of my most common fears is being confined. Damn it. Yeah, I didn't know.
And then, yes.
Yeah, it's creepy how well this thing knows me.
And what were you?
I thought I was someone else, but this thing.
Share with us. Tell
I
us.
thought I was a thinker, but this thing told me I'm an organizer, and when I look at all the discovery, yeah, that's really creepy.
Wow. And which thing do you wish didn't describe you?
Oh, the stubbornness and rigid and inflexible, right? I don't want to be that.
Thank you. Where do you feel that, like, if you just close your eyes and you think about, like, I am inflexible and rigid, like, what happens inside? And other people can try that same thing on, because I'll say I am disorganized and
Lack follow through.
inconsistent. Oh, I hate that. I feel it all in my back and my neck, and it goes down all the way to my tailbone. But something I've learned from a teacher is that, and actually most recently, did anybody listen to the Calm meditations?
I do.
Cool. There's a guy named Jeff Warren. He's also part of 10% Happier. You know him? He's pretty awesome. I never did meditation until I did Calm, and I just went to one of his retreats last month. And I emailed him the other day, like, what do you do when you're just feeling confined, or like you feel that thing in you, like trying to jump out of a relationship, of a job, of whatever it is, and because he's also a catalyst, he's ADD, he thinks very similarly, and he said you just need to feel it 100% in your body, just sit with it, because it's going to blow up quickly and pass, because your body can't handle thinking about that thing for a long time. And it's that whole concept of just try it on. And what my experience is, and I have another teacher who has taught that same thing, if you sit with that uncomfortable feeling, whatever it is that you're feeling, maybe it's out of control, maybe it's sad, maybe it's embarrassed. If you sit with that and you breathe and you say, and it's not bad, it's not good, it's just a feeling, you can actually feel it dissipate. It's amazing. And it's totally counterintuitive, because I remember the first time I tried it, I did it with overwhelmed. And that is like a characteristic, a thought I would never let myself go to. And then I sat there and I was working with this woman, and she said, all right, what are you feeling? But out of control. And I could tell that that was what I was feeling, because immediately I could feel it in my body, like it just started to relax. And I breathed, and pretty soon it was gone. So this is one exercise that we can use to help people learn about themselves, and then help people to feel understood. And it's not about, I'll give you guys, I was walking in San Francisco with a friend of mine. He just went through a spiritual year, and I asked him, what exercise do you think we should do with this team? Because there's 3 different exercises I have in mind. One is we could have them think about the best part of COVID for them and the worst part of COVID for them. And like, what was like the most challenging thing, and then the treasure that they found in there. And then share that with each other, and share just about like how that makes them feel. And then do the eye gazing, because that's like connecting deeply. Another option was to talk about growing up. We all have different growing up stories. And it might seem like, oh, that's not that important. It's hugely important. And for the most part, people want to talk about that, or at least they want to feel understood. Maybe they had a terrible upbringing, but there's something about understanding that about someone, and just saying, I see you, and I love that you're feeling like you can share that with me, that you will connect so quickly with that person. He chose this one. He said he thinks this one's the most fun, but only if they're willing to think about what makes them most uncomfortable, because that is really where the growth happens. And that's really where the connection happens. I'm going to name a few other things here, like I'm a weakling and a pushover. Like the helpers in here, I can only imagine that you guys were like, what? How could anybody think of me like that? And I will never want somebody to think of me like that. And too rigid. I mean, I know I am a catalyst and I don't want to be too rigid. Let alone if that's actually a persona that somebody might actually apply to me on a regular basis. And the thinker, procrastinating or being seen as a loner. I mean, these are very harsh points. And yet, I think that the feelings that come up around that, that's something that we can all dig into. And it's important that we open the space for our teams to think about those things, as well as to celebrate the good things. Okay. Any questions? Anyone else want to share more?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is it one unique thing only, or do you have like a little bit of this, a little bit of that potentially? Is there overlaps possible?
Well, the fun part is, I mean, this is all context. It's also situational, and you could see that it was asked that, you know, you can choose how you are at home, how you are in work. I happen to be actually the same, but I know a lot of people who are quite different. They show up in one way and another, which is another exercise in here that's one of my favorite exercises, and that's called personas. And we're not going to be able to get to it just because we have such a short period of time. But this is a conscious leadership concept as well. And personas is, the concept is, and I'll just skip ahead to here, the background. There are different facets to our personality. We each have maybe 5 to 10 personas that we whip out at different times. Some of them is what we go to when we're like just exhausted or we just want to be in our comfort zone. Like, this is how I show up. I'm going to the store. I'm not thinking about how am I showing up, and that's how I'm showing up. Sometimes it's because we are trying to perform. We think that this is what Alicia likes, so I'm going to show up how Alicia likes, and I'm going to show up how Sandeep likes. And what are we doing that we think is good about ourselves? Another one is how we show up when we're trying to protect ourselves. So, like, the exercise is to choose one of those ways, and I list a bunch of them here. So you can, and I'm jumping forward because you can do this with others in your family, and it's, as long as, if they've ever done any improv or anything like that, this is improv essentially. What we do is we try on like the martyr, or the firefighter, or the worrywart, or the control freak, or the rebel, or the cool guy. I know there's a cool guy in here. I'm not going to say who it is, but somebody in here is carrying that persona on a regular basis. Or maybe it's the jock or the investigative journalist. I did this with somebody, and mine was cutie. So that the exercise is that you come up with, what is this persona, and then you name them. You give them a name. It could be like Lisa, or it could be more of a cutie was mine. I didn't realize that the person was going to need to ask me all these questions. Like, what is most important thing to you? And you get into that persona, and you actually get them asking you with that name. So the guy I was doing it with had to call me cutie 8 times. And that was hysterical and embarrassing. But these are really interesting questions where we can dig deeper into, like, how have you made Tierney's life better? Like, how does being able to show up in this way make my life better? When did you first appear in this person's life? Who did you learn your role or your style from? And what are you most afraid of? And what do you most want? For me, cutie most wants to be liked and to be loved. And what essence quality do you bring to the room? And also, what do you cost? And I'll give you an example. So cutie, as absurd as it sounds, started when I was in 3rd grade, and I went to a new school, and I met the 2 coolest girls in the grade. And I made friends with them right away, but I never was intimidated. I was never intimidating to them. I learned how to be, because I was a 3rd wheel. They had their relationship. I couldn't get in between it, and they were confident 3rd graders. So what I learned is I could just add value in different random little ways. And instead of taking away from their light. I just kind of added more, and I wasn't intimidated by them, whereas a lot of people were. And going into life, that has allowed me to have friendships with people with very large egos who others might be like, oh, I can't stand. My sister is on the whole other end of the spectrum. The minute an ego pops up, oh, she gets out of there. She just can't stand it. She has her own ego too. And I do too, we all do. But the idea is that this persona has helped me to work with some really successful people because I'm happy to not take the spotlight. And I'm also happy to, I don't feel intimidated. So I think everybody here seems really level 4 out of 4 or 5. And so I'm going to jump to this one, actually. I'd like you guys to pair up. Yes, question.
Perhaps I would like to know how perhaps to adapt this for some kind of teamwork. If I look at this table, I find myself as an organizer. I read down the negative parts and that I put too much pressure on others and stuff like that and agree. First strange thing is that my bosses even put me exactly with this character in this position and say that's exactly the role you should play. That's one thing. But what I realized even that if I look at the 4 roles, that I, for example, if you can totally bring this back, have difficulties to work together with catalysts. I don't know whether this.
I love it.
Whether
that's
this
such another dynamic.
Or,
there are many layers to this.
And I have one pair in my team where one lady is a helper and another is a thinker, and they're like fire and water together. So when I read this sarcasm and put things on others, putting pressure on others, and the others cannot say no, they are fighting like hell since half a year, and I have no idea how to get this out of the way. Even my starting point was as diverse as possible, so I really try to have different roles or different characters in my team, and now I'm with the advice of my CF saying, be happy about the conflict or good things coming out of that. And I say, okay, the guys are fighting the whole day with each other.
So who can relate to this? There are definitely types that butt heads more than others. And every type actually butts heads. And what you're talking about, on one hand, you want diversity in your team because it breeds creativity. On the other hand, it can cause a lot of problems. And we also are all attracted to people who are like us. I can't tell you how many catalysts I meet. Meanwhile, I hear that they're really unique and rare. But what I've seen as a tool that I've used in this environment is, has anybody heard of Enneagram?
Had a free discussion on that once.
So Enneagram is a tool. A lot of these, who doesn't believe in personality tests? And be honest, just come on. Somebody in here is like, these things are so lame.
They're in the other course.
In the other
I think it's great for everybody else.
No, I was gonna make it. It's not that I don't believe in personality tests. I think that personality changes over time. I think that when you tie that into how do someone rebrand him or herself? How do you evolve into a persona that you didn't have in the past, but it may very well trigger your next role? Like it changes. That's what I think about it.
I love it. Yeah, because, and just like you're saying, we each have one of these 4 types, and maybe like we're tying on all of them. And then we have on top of that 10 different personas. Like I have a very non-catalyst persona that I tried on and wore for like 3 years of my career in the very beginning. Extremely organized, very professional. And my boss came up to me one day and said, you know, you can like loosen up a little. I was like, really? That you can say that you're a 65-year-old man and I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I feel like I need to be completely squared away. I don't have the experience everybody else has. I want to be taken seriously. But after that, I started loosening up.
Tierney, I had a question.
Yeah.
So the true characteristics of a person comes under tremendous pressure, right? And when you say I'm at home, I'm not under pressure. So is my assessment of me accurate? in
I
that?
love your question, and it goes back to Jorgen's. So the Enneagram is a tool that talks about how people show up. It's an assessment. It takes about maybe 30, 40 minutes to do it. It's much more intensive than this, but it comes back with out of 9 different types. And the difference between this and most personality tests and the Enneagram is Enneagram talks about why are people like this, not what are they, why. And for me, the why has made all the difference. My sister, in the Enneagram, I'm 1 type, and she's the type that is like the control. And she likes not having change. She's very fearful about change. She's also very organized and timely, and it used to really bother me. I felt like she was judging me all the time, that I'm so loose and free and wanting to, have different new things going on. It turns out she wasn't judging me. It's that her whole life has culminated in helping her to have this mindset of being a 6, which is she's a problem solver. Because she's constantly trying to protect herself. Whereas I'm a problem solver because I'm trying to constantly think about brand new things. And understanding that about her, we used to butt heads. I never would want to go on a vacation with her, ever. I mean, it would be miserable. And now we've gone on like 3 in the past year. So it's learning about the whys. Probably your people they're looking at each other and they're thinking from their perspectives. But if they do something, the Enneagram, and it's going to open their eyes to each other and help them to appreciate one another. And now you can tap into, because they all have different skills. Like for me, I want to get all of the organizers' numbers before you guys leave, please. Yeah.
If I may answer to Rohit's question, right? So in my opinion, I believe personality is something that you are at the core, right? It couldn't change whether you are at home, whether you are with friends, family, or at work, right? I mean, this is your general behavior of what you are, what you believe in. Right? That's the overall response. I mean, you cannot be somebody at work just because you are under pressure, right? I mean, you are a trait of whether being organized, whether you want to be catalyst or you want to thinker, that will come in automatically.
So I'm going to jump now forward to the persona. So you speak to this right here. Most of us walk around not recognizing that we're in a persona, and we're doing our best to be authentic. And I think that's what you're talking about here. And I forgot, what is the gentleman in the back? Rohit. Okay, so I forgot to mention that part of the Enneagram assessment and the outcomes is that there are types that we move towards when we're relaxed, calm, and also when we're under stress. And those things aren't good or bad. So you can be calm and relaxed and in a bad mode, or you can be calm and relaxed and in a great mode. And so they actually differentiate, like it gets into the details. And then as well as in the stressed mode, you might think, oh, stress is never good, but actually stress is better than not being stressed a lot of the time. But it's a good stress. It means energy. It means excitement. It means what happens when you, we were talking at our little table at going slow, that slow and fast can often be about, do you like what you're doing? Like that's when we start talking about slow or fast. If you love what you're doing, I don't think you're really thinking about, am I going too fast? So does that make sense? I saw you shaking your head about stress not being healthy or being healthy.
I think, it's a mindset issue. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, good stress is probably,
Like challenges.
that's right. It is not a natural state. Stress in general throws people off, I think.
But you need a little bit of stress in order to.
Yeah.
And all of us here, I know, like it because we're here and we're asking for it. Yes?
So are we saying that the personality tests are not the essence of your true self, it's the self within the ecosystem that you're in? And that's why there's so many different personas or personas. sorry.
I think that for the way I look at it is that you have one of the 4 different types, and that is kind of how you naturally through all of your life have evolved to be. And you, like Ricardo said, you might change. I mean, you might actually go from being a helper to a catalyst, or it's really hard for a catalyst to go to something else, I do think. But they could have personas that have more organization around them. Because these are all controlled, whether it's subconscious or not, these are all things that we're doing in the back of our mind. And so I'd like just to take a moment to think about, you don't need to think about the 4 that we talked about. So whatever you typed as, just think about in your life, it can be in showing up with your family. It can be showing up on a first date. What do you like? It can be showing up with your team, or how about the most senior person at your company? How do you show up? Just think about the different, when you're in a rush, how do you show up at vacation? Like, these are all different ways that we show up. And if we start thinking more about it, it might seem like, oh, this is a waste of time, but it's actually very interesting, because when we think about the questions that we're talking about here, like, what is it that this person, this persona is most afraid of? What do they want? There's so much work that can be done around those questions. So let's just, we only have a few more minutes, and I'm happy to stay longer if people want to, but take a moment, close your eyes, and choose one aspect of yourself. And raise your hand if you don't have one.
Don't have an aspect of yourself?
Yeah, that you haven't thought of an aspect of yourself. Like, you just don't know what you're, okay. All right, keep, so I want you to close your eyes again and think about, how do you show up and lead? What's your brand? Okay. Now, do you still not have an aspect of yourself?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, me neither.
Okay, you're artistic. You're extremely creative.
How do you,
I
know what I do for.
I've been observing. And so that's a persona that you come out as, like, a really artistic, creative person. I'm sure that you're not applying that all the time in your life. Okay, so close your eyes and now name that part of Suki.
That is not artistic?
No, the one that is, like, that's like.
Are you allowed to name it Suki?
You could.
What?
So you want to come up with it's like an avatar. So you have all these different avatars that you can choose to play with. And now there's in conscious leadership, there's actually even a concept of going to a party in character, and you have to stay in character and you have to exaggerate it. And there was a story about how one person's like so laid back that, like, they didn't even get in the door of the party because they're just chilling in the front and they're just letting everyone else go. And like the person who's so bubbly and artistic or creative, like there's innovative, like, how does that show up? Like, you want to name that avatar something. Like, I named mine Cutie.
I have a hard time even dressing up as somebody else for Halloween.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think that part of it, first of all, I didn't grow up in a culture where Halloween was celebrated. I've only adapted that here. And I would say I have only been able to see myself as somebody else over the last 4 or 5 years that I started dressing up for Halloween. I feel very uncomfortable.
I would love to explore that further.
Because it's not me.
So one of the values to this, so one of the values is you can do a lot of self-discovery and kind of like start finding your blind spots. And the thing is that, okay, it's over. The blind spots are something that you're going to not be able to see usually, but if you start investigating in this persona way, you can actually start finding them. And another thing is it's not always appropriate to show up in a certain way. You want to, like Howard taught us, that you want to show up in the way that's going to be most effective. And so if you can start developing these different personas and try, we did this, and it's the last thing I'm going to say, and it's going to be vulgar, unfortunately. In the year-long coaching workshop, we did this exercise, and one of the women showed up as bitch. That was her. She whipped out, and it was extremely fun. She said that her persona is bitch. And by the way, she just used it and she got a massive promotion with that. Like she was hard-nosed, negotiating, didn't care, didn't give an S. And so that's something that for me, like, I don't know how to necessarily like navigate and jump back and forth, like you said, but if we can learn how to and find some authenticness within all of it, we will be even more powerful. So thank you very much for joining. This has been so much fun. And more, you can definitely reach me. I put my number on the last page, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So, a few